If you're looking to bring a Boeing 737 cockpit to your home, this brand new device by Cockpit Simulator might just be what you're looking for. By the end of this video, my goal is to make you familiar with its features, my experience using it, and any points that I think could use some improving. But before we start, I have two quick disclaimers. Firstly, I have practically no experience using a real 737 throttle quadrant, so I'll try to use objective descriptions of how things feel, and just know that any subjective descriptions are not a comparison of the real airplane. And secondly, this product was sent to me by Cockpit Simulator for review, but I still have full autonomy to mention whatever I want, and I aim to give you an honest overview. So with that all said, let's get started by checking out the actual throttles. Of course, you get two independent throttles, each with two buttons, one for toga and the other for auto throttle disconnect. Moving the throttles feels very smooth and heavy, which I love, except Engine 2's throttle towards the end of the axis has a slightly rough feeling. Both throttles have reverse thrust levers with accurate mechanical locks, preventing you from deploying the reversers unless the throttles are in idle, and once the reversers are deployed, the throttles are mechanically locked in idle as well. The reversers also have their own axes, allowing a full range from idle to max reverse thrust to be selected. Moving the reverse thrust levers to their detents takes quite a lot of force, but thanks to the metal construction, it feels completely sturdy. Now what makes Boeing's throttles unique compared to Airbus is of course the throttles physically being moved by the autothrottle, which is also replicated in the product. Let's now move over to the speed brake, which, like the throttles, is also motorized, so they can automatically deploy upon landing when they're in the armed detent. And if you forgot to arm them, but select reverse thrust, they'll mechanically be raised out of the down detent so they can deploy. Advancing the thrust levers forward will also activate the motors, this time putting the speed brake back in the down detent. You can of course use the speed brake manually across the entire axis, except during flight where it is mechanically blocked at the flight detent. Cockpit Simulator also includes another speed brake panel, which has an extra 50% marker, so you can customize it the way your preferred airline has it. Now let's move over to the flap lever, which has 9 positions from flaps 0 to 40. Just like the real airplane, you have to lift the flap lever to move it into the different positions. It also has gates at flaps 15 and flaps 1, preventing you from accidentally retracting the flaps too much during a go-around. And again, thanks to the metal build, the gates are very sturdy. Next, we'll have a look at the trim wheels, which are also motorized, so you can see them spinning as you, the autopilot or the speed trim system, adjust the trim. And just like the real airplane, when the flaps are extended, the speed at which the trim wheel moves is increased. Both sides of the throttle quadrant have trim position indicators, which move fairly accurately, though sometimes I do see a difference of up to half a unit between the simulator and indicated position on the hardware. Both trim wheels also have a handle which can be unlocked and pulled out by pressing the button on top. You can then manually trim the airplane, and thanks to the handle being able to freely rotate, you don't ever have to let go while manually trimming. That said, from my experience, the manual trimming feature seems to be work in progress, and the level of functionality varies depending on which aircraft add-on you're using. But the hardware is definitely there, so it's just a matter of some software needing updating. To stow the handle, you once again have to push the button on top so it unlocks to be stowed. Oh, and whenever you decide to mess around with manual trim, try to remember to stow the handle when you're done, as it's not that fun to get hit by it when it's spinning at max speed. And I imagine it might have happened to someone before since it's written in the 737's FCOM too. Now let's have a look at the fuel cutoff switches, which is what you get with the MAX variant, but they also have a throttle quadrant with the engine start levers if you get the NG variant. Since you obviously don't want to accidentally knock these into the cutoff position and starve your engines of fuel, you have to pull these switches outwards before moving it into the idle or cutoff position. The switch feels very sturdy, like you'd expect for such an important function. A feature exclusive to the engine start switches is the extra red lights in case of an engine fire, which help you identify the affected engine more easily. Left of the start switches is the parking brake, which also comes in two different designs depending on whether you buy the MAX or NG variant. However, both operate with the same principle, where you have to hold your brakes, then pull the parking brake switch, wait for the red light to come on, and then you can release the brakes and the switch will remain up. To release the parking brake, just tap your brakes and the switch will automatically come off. Next to the parking brake, there's a circular button which you can use to silence the landing gear warning in certain configurations. Further to the right, you have two guarded stabilizer trim cutout switches. On the MAX variant, they are labeled as primary and backup, and both switches will cut off the trim system from the electric switch, autopilot, MCAS, and the speed trim system. On the NG variant, they are labeled as main electric and autopilot, and each switch cuts off the respective trim system. Unfortunately, it's not possible to buy the NG variant with the new engine start switches and parking brake without also having the stab trim cutout switch labels corresponding to the MAX. But of course, the behavior of the switches adapts to whatever simulator add-on you're using. And if you can't unsee the mismatching labels, a simple sticker could do the trick. So that wraps up the throttle quadrant itself, but there's still a fire protection panel that comes with it. I believe in the future they will also make it possible to purchase these two products separately, but for now they're bundled together. Let's start with the three big red handles, which mostly behave in the same way, just the left one is for engine 1, the middle one is for the APU, and the right one is for engine 2. Normally, the handle is locked, preventing you from accidentally pulling it out, which would cut off the respective engine from fuel, hydraulics, electrics, and pneumatics. So in order to pull it out, there either needs to be a fire detected, which will cause the respective handle light to glow in red, or you can push the override button below the handle, which will also release the lock, allowing you to pull it up. You can then rotate the handles to the left or right to discharge the respective fire extinguishing bottle, or in the case of the APU, which only has one bottle, it will simply discharge whichever way you rotate it. In the bottom left corner, we have a 3-position test switch, which is spring-loaded to the center position. This lets you test the fault in-op indications when held to the left, or test an overheat and fire in all engines by holding it to the right. You can silence the oral fire warning by pressing the bell cutout button. On the right side, you can check your squibs using another self-centering switch with 3 positions. And finally, we also have the overheat detector switches for engine 1 and 2, allowing you to troubleshoot any potential faulty warnings. This switch is similar to the PAX switches, where you lift it to move it into one of its 3 positions. The switch also has a white rubber feeling cap, making it easier to grip. Of course, the panel also includes all the associated lights, those being the engine 1 and engine 2 overheat lights, the wheel well fire warning light, the overheat detector fault indication light, the APU overheat detector in-op light, the APU bottle discharge light, and finally the left and right bottle discharge lights. The placards and text are also accurately marked, making it look practically identical to the real thing. Also, you can test every individual light by simply pressing on it, which also works in add-ons which don't have that feature, like the Zibo or PMDG 737. The entire device has realistic backlighting too, which can be adjusted using the panel brightness knob on the center pedestal. Before we look at software, compatibility, and pricing, I just want to show you the stand it comes with, which looks super realistic and matches the airplane's real dimensions, making it perfect for a home cockpit, but it's also just the right height to be used as a standalone piece. It comes with a document and cup holder for both sides, which can easily be attached or removed. The front of the base has cutouts allowing you to pass cables, and you also have 2 more on the sides if you don't use the document and cup holders. And if you have or plan to get a center pedestal to sit behind the fire protection panel, you can unscrew these 4 screws to remove this metal plate, revealing another cutout so you can pass the center pedestal cables through the throttle quadrant all the way to your PC. The connection is super simple with just a USB to your PC and a power cord, both of which are included and can be nicely tucked within the base itself. The bottom of the base has some holes which I think you can use to screw it down, but on my floor it's heavy enough that it doesn't slide around during regular use. But it does have some pads at the bottom which allow me to push it without scratching the floor. One of my favorite things about Cockpit Simulator's products is how easy it is to get started using them. Funnily enough, the hardest part of setting the product up was bringing it upstairs, as it comes in a massive box and weighs around 40 kilos or 85 pounds. It's also packaged very well, so it takes some time to crack it open, which can feel painstakingly long if you're excited to check it out. Oh, and a little tip if you're watching this while waiting for yours to arrive, try to bend these little metal pieces as straightly as possible, or you'll end up having to rebend them all again like myself so the panels can come off easily. Once it's plugged in, all you need to do is install their bridge software, run it, and it will configure everything in a single click. You can then enable a feature that makes it launch itself when the sim starts up, and that's really all there is to it. You don't need to configure anything within your flight simulator, and the software is super stable and flexible. It doesn't start acting up if you forget to launch it before starting the sim or anything like that. You can also use the bridge software to test your hardware and do firmware updates, all of which are very intuitive features. If your firmware ever needs updating, you'll simply see it mentioned on the main page. Then you just need to go to the firmware update page and enter DFU mode, so it detects that you're trying to update the firmware. At the moment, there aren't any firmware updates, so they didn't write on their website how to enter DFU mode, but it usually just requires holding a button while plugging the device into your PC. You should then be able to hit update and you'll be good to go. The hardware test page also lets you check out all the features described in this video, such as the various motors, backlighting, and more, so you can troubleshoot any potential issues and see if they're maybe coming from the simulator. What you're seeing on screen right now is just the test page for the throttle quadrant without the fire protection panel, as they're still to add the hardware test page in a future software update for that panel. At the moment, both the NG and MAX variants are compatible with all the PMDG 737 variants for P3D versions 4 and 5, all PMDG 737 variants for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024, the Zibo mod for X-Plane 11 and 12, ProSim's Boeing 737-800 and MAX 8, and the iFly 737 MAX for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024 with limited auto-throttle functionality. This is subject to change in the future, and I've noticed there are a few small things which need some fixing for specific aircraft, but as the product is brand new, I believe they'll likely be fixed by the time you watch this video. Now let's talk a bit about pricing. At the time of making this video, the throttle quadrant and fire protection panel are bundled together for around €4,100 or 4,900 USD. They may separate the fire protection panel in the future, making it possible to buy only the throttle quadrant for a cheaper price, but that's just my guess. Now, unfortunately for Boeing lovers, since Boeing airplanes are designed with so many motorized moving parts, the prices for such one-to-one products are super expensive. That said, Cockpit Simulator is offering it for a cheaper price than a lot of the competitors, while also including the fire protection panel, which is not included in the prices of any of the competitors shown on screen. While I haven't used any of the competitors' products, what Cockpit Simulator built is a truly great feeling piece of hardware with a very solid construction, accurate design, and very simple to use. And it's also compliant with certain EASA and FAA requirements for simulator hardware. So in conclusion, this product is definitely not cheap, but when comparing to similar products on the market, it actually does turn out to be one of the better value for money options while still retaining all of Boeing's unique design features, especially when it comes to the motorized parts. The attention to detail is also really impressive, with accurate-looking fonts throughout the product and screws in all the right places. It's really hard to spot the difference between the real 737 throttle quadrant and this product. The only detail I personally noticed was the text saying airplane nose up on the left stabilizer trim panel seems to be slightly off, since the word up is partially hidden, which doesn't seem to be the case when comparing to the real throttle quadrant. But other than that, it's certainly easy to mistake it for the real thing. I'd say the point of most importance is how the product behaves in the long run. Of course, it's covered by their warranty policy, ensuring it's free of defects for 2 years when used properly, but I certainly hope that one can get many more years of fun out of it before any issues start popping up. But since I've only had this product for a bit over a week, I can't really speak about that topic just yet. But I'll drop a pinned comment with any important updates over time as I use it, so you can have an idea of how the product ages. So that wraps up my review of the Cockpit Simulator Boeing 737 Throttle Quadrant. I hope this video gave you the information you were looking for, and if you did enjoy it, feel free to leave a like, and as usual, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. You can also check out my other video reviewing the rest of Cockpit Simulator's Boeing 737 product lineup, including the MCP, CDU, and EFIS control panels by clicking the video on screen.